Well, we all know each other now. So, yeah, I mean, this program is crazy. David, I don't even want to know how many hours you spent into this. I'm sure, and Ryan, I'm sure it's been days, weeks, months.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it looks like I've even grown since I've last used it, which was probably a month ago. And now it's like, this new update just looks insane.
Yeah, sweet.
So, yeah, show us everything. Take us deep. We're ready.
Okay. So in Sunday Keys, we've kind of got like two different main approaches. And so the first is what we've already put together, these layered worship patches. So in Sunday Keys now, in the new version, which just came out, that's 1.4, you've got 30 different layered patches that are sort of like, ready to go or like at least ready to dial in. So almost all of these are going to have a sound or a module or a preset in each of the 4 sections. And you don't have to use them all at once, but the idea is that you probably could and it would work. So oftentimes, especially if you guys bring in like completely new volunteers or people who've maybe never used MIDI stuff before, these are a great place to start because, I mean, the names are pretty descriptive, right? Piano, EP pad, you know exactly what you have on tap, right? And so from here, you can just do piano. I mean, you could just bring in a Rhodes. And then you've got a couple different flavors of pads. That's pretty quiet because the filter's all the way down. Yeah, and so this is a great place to start for somebody who's never done MIDI before, or if you don't have time to dial something in from scratch. If it's a curveball thrown in at the last minute, or something that you don't have a lot of specific inspiration for, if you're trying to put a new take on like an old song or whatever, these can be a good place to just jump off from and sort of see, where could we go with this song. And like I said, most of the time the idea is that you can bring these layers up together and they will sort of add to each other and not really get in the way of what you're trying to do. Now, again, you have to serve the song, right? So like, I wouldn't necessarily layer an acoustic piano and an electric piano together very often, but there are times where you might go back and forth between the two in a song, or even from song to song. You might stay on the same patch, but shift your lead sound or your rhythmic playing sound from one to the other. So there's a ton of presets in here that cover all sorts of ground. I mean, there's just boatloads of
I just
sounds.
saw an organ.
Maybe. Yeah, so we could talk about like, we've got a couple different organ vibes in Sunday Keys. There's what we call like a pad organ, which is sort of like pretty spacey. And then you've got a tone control on it. Yeah, you can bring that down so you can hear it.
I know we don't do like a lot of organ on our music, but every now and then it's a nice texture, especially under certain vamps, as long as it doesn't get too like, it can just be a nice like in the back kind of texture.
And that's why we've got this tone control here that you can really mellow it out. And it kind of loses
nice.
It kind of loses its strength here, but in the room you're going to hear that warm low mid sound.
Yeah. That's good.
And then you've got on the mod wheel, you actually have the drawbars will open up.
Oh, that's great.
So now that if you roll that back, you'll hear just subtly morph some of those higher register drawbars up. And it can almost play that sort of bright synth roll for these big moments of tunes.
You hear that? Yeah, that really high. That's a good like frequency to be in. It adds a big.
Yeah, it's going to be like above the vocal. It's not going to like get in the way with the electric guitar parts. It's just going to add that like high-end air that can really cut through. And then you might not hear that mid-range stuff. It's just going to sit like right underneath everything else.
Yeah, that's great.
And then here in the pad organ, you've got a pipe organ on this second knob.
Ooh.
So this is like a Hans Zimmer kind of thing. But it's on its own, it might sound kind of like it stands out a little bit. But when you bring things in with it,
Interstellar.
Totally.
There's an octave on this as well? Is that?
Yep. So I'll bring this down.
This is actually one of my favorite things about Sunday Keys is the octave feature, especially in the piano, because it makes it sound like you have 8 hands.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It literally sounds like, because like
It's just an octave up on everything you do.
On every single
It
note.
doubles, right? Or is it like, is it double or is it transposing?
No, it's
Let's go to
doubling.
the-
So it's
yeah.
Can we go
so
to
let's
the
go to
piano?
just the piano. So here's the worship piano, just on its own.
Right? Yeah.
I'll smash it. Is the octave?
Yeah.
Isn't that great? That's like,
So,
that's next level right
and
there.
it's really helpful when you are filling a lot of space, because then even if you're playing like just the bass note in your left hand, you're still able to sound like you're filling more than just that piano bass roll, but actually some of the mid-range piano stuff that you normally can't do when your right hand's all the way up here.
Yeah.
Listen to how full that sounds versus, wait, where's that? I turned it
It's
off.
right there, yeah.
So this sounds good.
And
I turned it off, sorry.
there you go.
It's
and
straight one of our songs. But
Yeah.
yes.
And that's like a lead piano
Yeah.
tone, that's really cool. And then you can bring in these delays that are gonna do the YouTube piano thing. See if I can.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not playing like chords and you need a lead part to have like an extra bit of power, you can borrow from our electric guitarist friends and sort of take that. And with that octave, you don't need to do very much at all. And that delay just kind of gives it that extra bit of power, that second attack.
Is that the reverse? Is that on right now?
Yeah, it is. That's right here if you want it off. And then your delay level's right there.
Do you guys hear that reverse tail? It's like super.
So I love to use that for like whole notes if I'm playing like a solo intro or an outro to a song. Just turning on that reverse modifier and just staying like in the mid range. It sort of pads everything out a little bit in a really subtle way, but you still have decay to your sound. So it's a different take on filling that sort of pad space, but not having to like really be specific and intentional about your changes, because that's just going to slowly fade over time instead of just sustaining until you hit your next chord or until you take your foot off the pedal. So yeah, there's a couple different piano sounds. So this worship piano is like a pretty bright sound. It's pretty focused, and when you compress it, it gets really aggressive and kind of huge. And then we've got this real piano sound, which is like more of, I would say, like an upright sort of roomy sound. And I don't know how much that's going to translate here.
Definitely a sharper attack. I can hear that. Maybe if you tried.
Yeah, and I really like to mess with the tone on this one and bring that down about. If it is a more subtle moment, it really handles that tone modifier coming down a little bit really well. So you've just got, these both can do the same things, they can fill the same space, but it's all about being able to be creative and not feel like you're always using the exact same piano tone. Sometimes you might want to play that same piano through the whole set, and other times different songs might need something totally different. So you've got options there. And then one thing that I really like to do is we've got this tack piano preset in here. So this is sort of like a dulcimer kind of sound, which is popping up in a lot of music right now. If you want to just poke around with it, you can.
Play this song. I just heard and I was like, oh, it kind of sounds like that.
Yeah, so it's like something that I wouldn't necessarily use as my only layer, but something that, when combined with something else, can add that extra little bite or crunchiness to the sound, especially when you play it up in the higher registers. So So let me talk about like the second way that you can sort of use Sunday Keys, because that will explain like where you might actually find this preset to add something to your sound.
Yeah.
So the first approach is just to use one of these layered presets and maybe just tweak it and make it work for the song or the set list or the person that's playing. And the second sort of approach is a little bit more customizable. It gives you the ability to, instead of starting with a layered patch, just create a layered patch pretty quickly. So how that works, we call it Patch Builder, because that's what it does. You've got the 4 sections here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the extra section, which is just like a really simple volume control. But the 4 main sections are all these, right? So you can see you've got the orange section, green, blue, and purple, and then that's what you have on screen too. So every individual sound, you've got the 30 different sounds. So you've got a worship piano, you've got EPs, you've got tons and tons of pads, you've got strings, organs, all different stuff, all different sorts of stuff. They all exist in all 4 of the sections. So basically you can say like, I know that I'm looking for a piano. So you'll go to section 1, which I think you can see that's pretty clear. Like you've got section 1 and all these patches. Mm-hmm. So you can say, I know I want a piano. So like I'm gonna pick between like worship piano and real piano, and okay, I'll do the worship piano, whatever. And then you'll go to section 2 and say, I know that I want a pad sound for like the big part of this song. So I need something that kind of gets pretty big. So you can just find a pad sound and pick out what was going to work for you for the specific song or for the set or whatever. And then just sort of make a note of what you want to do. And then we could grab another pad or something in section 3. So maybe this was I think you use this one, so
I like this one. I've used this.
Can you bring that mod wheel up so they can... So this one, it does like the attack thing, but it also sort of plays like a pad after that attack fades out. And so when that mod wheel's down, it's just going to fill that space, but you can totally get big and aggressive with it too. So we'll just do the 3, but the principle's the same. So we'll say that we wanted to grab that dance synth, and then, what did I say? The worship
piano.
pad. Yeah, worship pad, and then the worship piano. So to use Patch Builder, all you do is hold Command on your keyboard. So I'm holding Command, take my word for it. And then just click on each patch. So we're just going to click on all 3. And when you do that, they'll all be highlighted here in blue, you can see. And then up here in the settings cog, you just choose new patch from selected patches. And when you do that, it's just going to throw everything right there. So whatever the settings of each of the patches were is where you'll start. So you see we've got like everything's turned up right now. But you might want to start, let's say you want to start with just the piano. So all you do is you just bring everything to where you want to start. So bring your volume faders down. You know, let's say you want to smash the piano and you want some reverb. Like, you pick your starting point and then you just hit save. And then when you save the concert, whatever is on screen will be where you start the next time you go to that patch. So instead of having to open up all of these individual mappings and set the saved values, or like go into the plugins and tweak the EQs and everything manually, just dialing them in on screen and then saving the concert means that you don't have to open the plugin or type anything in here manually. So then you can just name the patch whatever makes sense to you, if it's for a song or like, you know, worship ballads or upbeat song or whatever makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and Colin said that you guys kind of can bring your own things to the table to a point.
Yeah.
So if you want to start, you know, finding your favorite sounds or setting things up for other people on your team and saying like, hey, you might really dig this for this song, this is a great way to be able to do that without having to spend a bunch of time in plugins and in mapping menus and stuff. So from there, then you can just use the patch however you like, and if you find that you want to start with a different starting point, just copy and paste the patch, change the settings and save it again, and then you can start from a totally different place.
When you're exploring like the other individual patches, like in each section, and you change something there, when you save, it'll save it everywhere?
No, it'll only save it in that one patch. Every patch is self-contained. So if you change something on one of the individual presets, it'll only save those changes if you save the concert before you change patches. So if I were to go here to this pad and then turn the volume down and then go to another patch, as soon as I go back to that patch, the volume's going to default back to where it was.
Okay.
So, which is good because your starting point in the individual presets is always going to be the same. But then when you go to these layered patches, you'd have a lot of control over what they end up starting like.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I guess we'll talk about Tonic now, which I think is the craziest part of Sunday Keys.
All right, so Tonic's just like a pad generator. So it just plays an ambient pad in whatever key you tell it to. So what it does musically, it plays the 1 and the 5, which will work under any chord voicing in that key other than maybe like flat 7 if you're like going nuts. But for like 99% of worship songs, the 1 and the 5 in an ambient sort of gentle droning way will work. And it just adds this sort of glue to your sound that can really work well for transitions. If it's just you starting a song off, but you don't want to necessarily have your pad like changing keys with you, like if you're moving through the progression with a piano, but the pad it feels like too intense to move with the piano through those chords, then Tonic can be a great way to fill the space. So Tonic, it's kind of what you see is what you get. So you pick your key, and you just turn it on, and then it just plays. So you've got a volume control, which you can use to fade it in or out. And then it'll automatically fade out when you turn it off. So if you end a song, obviously do that. To change keys, you just pick a new key, and it'll just crossfade between the two, which is really nice. And then one of my favorite things is this little transform pad here on the top left, this blue dot.
Yeah.
This changes the character of the drone in a gentle, like a smooth transitional way, but it can totally fill a lot of space or really small amounts of space.
I love the movement thing. That's my favorite.
So then if you hit this motion button, it'll automate the movement in the pad. So if it's really a time for the keys to just sort of carry things, then you can just turn that motion button on, and it'll just move through the different sounds that Tonic can do in a really like musical way. So it'll move throughout. Yeah, it just scrolls through. It's sort of like an eight pattern. And then you have a speed control, so if you need it to move more aggressively, then you can turn that speed control up, and you'll sort of hear, because of how these things ramp in and out, you'll sort of hear these moments of swelling, and then it'll fade back down. So there's a couple like sweet spots in the speed, like about halfway gives you sort of a pretty consistent moving feeling. Up here at the top is sort of like this like swell, release, and then down at the very bottom is more of like the long haul, like I'm going to be playing for several minutes kind of thing. So it's just going to gently take you through. Sometimes even this is like when you're not playing at all, like when you're just letting things sit. This can work really nicely. And then you can also just do that by hand if you have the app on your phone, or if you just want to click and drag. Like you can start a song off by just sort of fading this up until you just hit that like little bit of space. And then you start your song. So if your MD's like we're about to start, and then you just give it a bar or two to establish a new key, or to even if you're in the same key, go from like mid tempo to down, or maybe a few moments of silence. This can be a really gentle way to get wherever you're going next. And
so you literally just let's say we're going from D to C. Like you just click on it. That's great.
So you have like a few seconds of transition there,
but it's not awkward.
There's just like this dissonance, but then a nice release. And so you got to be intentional about that too. Like some keys you might not want that fade from like D to D flat, or from like really harsh keys on the circle of fifths. Like it might not always make sense to actually have a fade between. Sometimes we might want to. This song is over, this song is starting, and it's in a different key. But like if you're going from C to G, like it just opened up. It just like takes you there. So that's something you want to work with your band directors and say like, when do you want me to take us there transitionally? And then you can be a resource. You can be an asset for those times when those transitions need to be gentle, when you just want to be able to get there slowly over time. So if you want to use Tonic for transitions, then you can just get to the key, and then once the band kicks in, you can take it out. So you could either bring the volume down and leave it running, and then you could always bring it back in at the tail of the song, or the bridge or whatever, you could leave it running throughout and let your sound person have some of that control. Sometimes if you've got a smaller band or if you want to be able to focus on piano, you can send this Tonic to your front of house and say, hey, I'm going to be sending you this drone. And depending on your culture, they can blend that in or take that out.
That's great.
To fill those moments sort of as they hear it in the room. Like this needs a little bit of glue. This can be some of that glue. Especially if you're like single guitar, just a single keys player. Sometimes this is just the thing that you need to add that extra bit of texture and glue. So in the version of Sunday Keys that just came out last week, we added this function called Tonic Automator that lets you automatically change Tonic when you go to a new patch. So by default, Tonic just stays the same. Like, so if the drone's running in A and you change to a new patch, it just stays there in A. So no matter where you go. But if you're going from one song to the next and you've got to think about your nano control, you've got to think about where the band is going, you're listening to the MD and you know that Tonic's starting the next song, but you don't want to have to worry about like nailing the transition volume wise. Maybe you want the octave up on for the first song and not for the second. So this little script that we had written lets you automate all that stuff, which is really cool. There's like just one extra step you have to do with your hardware to get it to work. We have a video about it that you guys are welcome to check out. It takes like 5 minutes to set up one time, and then all you do is just copy and paste this Tonic Automator onto any patch, and then it actually opens up like a plugin. So you just get to pick your key, pick your volume, pick your XY settings, and whether or not you want motion on, all that stuff. Instead of having to do that in a moment, you can do all of that in advance, and then when you go to that patch, it's just going to do it automatically for you. So that can be really nice if you're trying to do 3 things at once. It's one less thing to do. So that video and a bunch of other videos are on our website. We have a pretty dense video tutorial page for Sunday Keys that you guys bought when you bought Sunday Keys. So you have access to it, and there's about 4 hours of video content that covers all the stuff we talked about tonight. It covers Patch Builder, all the layer patches, using Tonic, how to design your set list, how to make sure your computer's not going to crash. We talk about CPU a lot. We talk about connecting your hardware. Adding a second keyboard is in there. Making customizations is in there. How to add sounds from somewhere else is in there. So you don't have to just use these sounds. You can use Omnisphere, you can use Colin's patches, you can use factory presets, and they can still work in Patch Builder. They can still work in Sunday Keys. So there's a big tutorial on that. So that address is sundaysounds.com/SK start. And I'm sure that Colin can email it out to you guys afterwards. But feel free. So like in the license, we say like feel free to share it with all of your volunteers. So the product itself has a license, but the tutorial content, share that with anybody that's going to benefit from it on your teams. So.
Amazing. Well, guys, let's give it up for David. I thought I knew like a decent amount of stuff about this program, but my mind was just blown. Wow, this is such a cool. It's so flexible, so versatile. Wow, this is what an amazing thing. Like I know this is blessing churches all across the country, and it's going to bless ours. And now that we know how to use it really well,
can you automate for a keyboard player like me, who's not a keyboard player?
Yeah.
Can you automate like the transposition of the keyboard by patch?
Yeah, so you can transpose a patch by.
So say I wanted to play everything in C.
So you click on the patch.
Then I could.
Yeah, no, you're right here. Click on the patch, and then you've got patch transpose right there.
Okay, yeah.
So 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. I think you can go up to 36 steps. So.
Just do the math.
But yeah, you can make that work. And another my favorite thing in MainStage is called chord trigger. It allows you to play one note and have a chord output. So
to a scale.
That's how octave. That's how
octave works. But in a really you can get really complex. Brian, what's a good song patch that has? I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about because it's kind of hard to visualize.
Oh my gosh, are these all your
Here, we'll do Glorious Day.
Okay.
This is a dope one. Okay, did it go in? So I'm playing a bass note. And it's spitting all that back out at me in real time. So there's no track, nothing pre-recorded, it's all sequenced.
And that's all with the.
Yeah, so that's just. So chord trigger is super cool for like I'm a guitarist primarily, so like to be able to just nail all those complex voicings with a single bass note, it's really cool.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So, and especially if you've got folks that are really new and you just want to be able to like say like here's some voicings for you, chord trigger can totally do that stuff. So we got a tutorial about that on our website too. It's really easy. Basically you just pick your input note and then you play the chord, and then it will spit that out the next time you play that input note. It's pretty.
You want to show them the notes, like?
Oh, dude, that's a great idea.
Like,
really
we're
quick.
talking about like the shimmer, like.
Yeah, so this is a new feature, so I forgot it existed. If you don't know what something does, or if you're not sure what a preset might work well for, click on a preset, and then click on the name, and then you've got a detailed explanation of what the patch does right here. So like, I mean, some of these are obvious, right? Like all-purpose grand piano, like thanks a lot, like I already. But then it explains like the mod wheel doesn't do anything. Pitch bend adds like a subtle pitch, but then it like different effects combinations to try, and then other things that might layer well with. So especially for your really green, like maybe I played piano, but I've never played synth. This sort of stuff can work really well. So it can help explain the difference between the different pad sounds. Because you throw 5 pads at somebody and say like play a pad, they're like, well, what makes a pad different than any other pad? So this can help. And then the same is true of all the modifiers. If you click on one of the text labels, it'll just give you a really simple explanation of what that does. So like what octave does, what cutting the mids really means to somebody who might not know what EQ even is. So that can be helpful. That's great. Thank you for reminding me about that, Ryan. So every preset in Sunday Keys has those notes.